Tifa versus Scarlet, Vincent's transformations, and how big of a role will Wutai play in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3? I asked for your guys' thoughts and opinions on that, and you delivered some really cool ideas, which we're going to break down in today's video. So we're officially back with a brand new community comments video. I took a little bit of a break from doing them, primarily because there wasn't really anything new to discuss at the time. News has been pretty slow for the remake trilogy, and I kind of feel like I exhausted and burned myself out on those specific types of videos. And I want the community comments videos to feel cool and special, and a way for us to convene together to discuss all the cool stuff we're excited about for this trilogy. So having taken a break from that, I'm itching to start talking about FF7 again. We're very close to the 2-year anniversary of Ever Crisis, so cross your fingers and hope that we do get some sort of information and update on the remake project soon. And if we do, we'll discuss it here on the channel. And if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you subscribe, so that way when I do make a video discussing that stuff, you'll be able to check it out and leave your thoughts in those comments. But we start off first with a moment in Remake Part 3 that I think a lot of us are anticipating, and that is Tifa versus Scarlet. And you guys provided me with some ideas on how you think that could play out. We start off first with Empty Melodies, who writes, I have an idea on how they could do Tifa versus Scarlet. Beginning of the confrontation, Scarlet reveals that she actually knows martial arts too. The fight itself will be the rhythm button game from Remake's Honeybee Inn Dance and Rebirth's Junon Parade. Or I guess it will be like Rebirth's Loveless fights. Same deal, epic and cinematic, with again timed button presses. Then either the final blow of the minigame or the following cutscene will have the nod to the original, with Tifa slapping Scarlet across the face so hard it knocks her out. Greg Haggerty 9996 follows up by saying, hoping for a 2D fighter minigame for Tifa versus Scarlet. Think of the Sister Ray as a Street Fighter stage with combos and grabs and health bars at the top of the screen. Scarlet can be using some kind of battle armor or something so it's fair, and the fight ends with a big fatality style QTE where Tifa slaps the shit out of her. Not actually expecting the game to do all that, but it would be cool. And Wired 1992 follows up by saying how many would be upset if it was Yuffie versus Scarlet instead of Tifa versus Scarlet, and is referencing the slap fight a must. So choosing to do the Tifa versus Scarlet fight as a QTE I think could work, because that would allow for a really cool cinematic martial arts fight where the two are just going at it like crazy. I think if you were to do that though, you would have that section of fans who are like, oh no, more mini games? We just had 80 million mini games in Rebirth and now they're gonna do another mini game here? What are they doing, Square? This game sucks, you ruined my childhood, it's gonna be terrible. But I think doing it that style would again allow for some really cool fight choreography to play out. Now as for the 2D style fighting minigame, I would love that. I love Square Enix and Capcom. They have a really good relationship with each other. So if CS1 could approach the producers and developers of Street Fighter VI, who are some really chill guys, and be like, hey, would you guys be willing to design one fight for us, Tifa versus Scarlet, and have it be cool? Just go all out with it, Street Fighter VI style. I think that would be a lot of fun. And again, I'm still hoping for Tifa to be in a fighting game, specifically Tekken, or for there to be some sort of Final Fantasy fighting game, maybe made by Capcom or an ArcSys, I think would be super cool. As for the ending, yes, I do still think it will be Tifa versus Scarlet. That's such an iconic moment from the original game. I do think the slap is still going to be there. It'll just be incorporated a little bit differently, but I do think Yuffie will get her revenge on Scarlet later in Part 3 when we go back to Midgar. And I hope that Barrett is there with her. I think out of anyone in the party, Yuffie and Barrett should be there together to take down Scarlet once and for all, because Shinra has affected everyone in this group, but Scarlet in particular has had a massive hand in hurting Barrett and Yuffie in their homes. So I think if anyone's going to take her out, it's got to be those two. And I do think this will play out like an actual boss battle instead of a QTE thing. And if there's any fight in this game that could be big and bombastic and over the top, it could be Tifa versus Scarlet. And I think it would work. If we look back at Rebirth, one of the criticisms some people had, and I even had this criticism, was that the Dyne boss battle was just a little too crazy and bombastic compared to the original, which was much lower key, a little bit more depressing. I do love the performances in Rebirth. I think everything leading up to the battle and what happens after it are really cool, but that boss battle with Dyne felt kind of out of place, maybe like it shouldn't have been as big and blockbustery as it was. But a Tifa versus Scarlet would benefit from that, I think. You could keep it simple too, just two women who are really skilled fighting it out. Now, if you ask me, I've been thinking about this specific scenario for a few months now, and I've concocted my way of how I think this should play out. Now, it's been a minute since I played OG FF7, but if I remember correctly, Tifa and Barret, as they're about to be executed and they're saved, they do get split up, which is why Tifa ends up on the Sister Ray by herself being chased by Scarlet. So how I would do it is you would have a traditional boss battle with like 3 phases of Tifa versus Scarlet on the Sister Ray. The background music would be the Valkyrie track that we got from 7 Remake. It's an incredible track, and I think it would score this fight really well. And since the developers like to have phases for these fights, you could start off with Tifa versus Scarlet in her mech. That's the first phase, until Tifa dismantles most of the mech. Second phase would be Tifa versus Scarlet with some mech abilities. Maybe she's got like a gauntlet or like a jetpack, until Tifa inevitably destroys those, and we get to the third and final phase, which is a good old-fashioned hand-to-hand fight between Tifa and Scarlet that ends in that cutscene slap. Now picture this. Tifa has beaten Scarlet, but she's at the very end of the Sister Ray. She's like, oops, I got no more room to move. This is the end of the line for me. Until we hear the roar of an engine. Tifa and Scarlet's clothing starts moving in the wind like crazy. Their hair is a mess. And we see from underneath the cannon, from the ocean, rises the high wind. And from the very first frame of that high wind showing up, imagine you hear this part of the Valkyrie track start to play. The high wind rises, Barret's hanging off the ladder yelling at Tifa to jump on. He's firing his gun at Scarlet and these incoming Shinra soldiers who are trying to capture Tifa. Yuffie's there, maybe on the deck of the ship doing her ninjutsu at Scarlet. Tifa runs and jumps and in slow motion grabs onto either Barret's hand or the ladder, and then they fly away. All of that with the Valkyrie track playing in the background, I have given myself chills.
And I say, I cannot talk about it without crying.
I think that would be so epic for it to play out like that. Getting that heroic shot of the high wind, incredible music, a really high-paced, high-energy cutscene, I think would be super sick. Up next, we move more into combat territory and what you guys want to see in part 3 in terms of combat upgrades. We start with Cade9689, who says, for combat, I thought it would be cool if they put the earrings separate from the accessories. I never really used them and they felt like a waste towards the end. With synergy attacks, I'd like to see the ability to level them up and actually choose the perk they grant. Obviously adding new ones as well, like maybe granted a full heal or bravery and shell, but being able to customize those would be a good addition in my opinion. I actually would like to see that too. There are a lot of really cool accessories in that game, and it kind of becomes a little bit of a bummer because you can't use so many of them. There are some earrings like the materia earrings that, you know, will give you the highest level of fire, or like HP plus earrings. But then you have to decide, okay, do I want that buff or do I want an accessory that's going to boost my ATB in battle, or something that's going to revive me if I go down? So maybe adding an extra slot specifically for earrings would be cool. Maybe it would make some loadouts that are a little bit too OP, but it would be nice to have the options to at least include earrings on top of what you're already using. Leveling up synergy abilities would be pretty sick. I do expect we're going to have a ton of brand new ones in part 3. I don't know if they're going to actually bring back synergy abilities that we saw in Rebirth, or if they're all going to be completely new. That's one thing I'm actually pretty excited for. But maybe being able to customize what each synergy ability gives you in terms of a buff would be super cool. Like, okay, you just did Synchro Cyclone with Cloud and Tifa. Not only does that give you infinite MP, but maybe it gives you regen, or it gives you a shield. That could be cool. Something to stack on top of that combat and add even more incentive to use not just your synergy abilities, but specific ones in combat. depending on what situation you're in. Next, we have Travailles du Chanson. I hope I said that right. There's some really unique names, cool stuff. They go on to say, Tri-Tech attacks for 1 and some guest party members temporarily helping in battle. Also DLC for the towers from Ever Crisis. We are most definitely getting Tri-Techs. I'd be pretty shocked if we didn't get Tri-Techs. And that's basically synergy attacks with 3 characters instead of just 2. We're gonna have a massive party. This is the end of the game. Teruki Endo, I know, is gonna wanna really go all out with this combat system and do the most he can since it's the end of the trilogy, and he's really talked about in past interviews about upping the ante from game to game. So I think he's really gonna bust combat open in part 3, specifically with those Tri-Techs. And I've even talked about in the past, like imagine if you had like a group limit attack like you saw at the end of Rebirth when you're fighting Genova. Everyone gets in there, they land a hit, and then they do one big massive attack together. So like a Tri-Tech limit break would be gnarly to see in this game. Guest party members, I think probably will happen. It just is dependent upon who. We could have Matt and Lucia from Ever Crisis maybe pop in for a section or 2. They are still alive, so maybe like going back to Wu Tai or whatever, they could lend a hand in some scenarios. I wouldn't be shocked if the Turks help us out again in some spots like they did in Rebirth at the Temple of the Ancients, which was a really cool fight. They work side by side with you and then you end up fighting each other again. I think that was super cool. Now, as for those Ever Crisis towers, if I remember what those are correctly, they are basically like waves of different floors of towers that you can progress fighting through, almost kind of like a survival mode or a horde mode. I think maybe having dungeons in Remake Part 3 that kind of act as that, like their own specific layered dungeons where you're going from floor to floor to acquire materia or summons or what have you, could work, and I think they will do stuff like that. Up next, we have Elfsong713, who brings up the Tri-Tech attacks by saying, are we going to get triple synergy abilities? Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth has a team attack that you can use with everyone if you save up your meters. So it would be cool to get something like that. Again, I'd be pretty shocked if they didn't implement Tri-Tech attacks. It just seems like the obvious evolution for that combat system and had to improve the synergy stuff by adding a third person into those attacks. But going with what you're bringing up here about saving your meter, maybe you could, instead of doing those Tri-Techs, you save up your meters. Once everyone has full synergy meters, then you could maybe do like that big limit break attack where the entire group attacks. That could be a cool way to implement a Tri-Tech limit break. Up next, we have Omni Slushy 1230. Great name. They say, I made a whole ridiculous combat overhaul mod for Cloud where I gave him tons of follow-up attacks, branching combo strings, and new limit breaks. I would love to see them expand the action side of things a bit more like that. I would also like the ability to call a summon to do just one attack for MP, like the OG, in addition to the normal summoning mechanic. Giving characters unique attacks based on the equipped summon would be cool too, or even synergy attacks with the summon. I find summons underwhelming currently. I'm curious to see how they upgrade basic attacks in Remake Part 3. It would be cool for characters like Cloud and Tifa, people who have melee or weapon-based melee stuff, to have branching combo chains like delay combos. I think could be pretty sick. That way you're not just doing the same basic attack over and over again, the same combo string rather with someone like Cloud. I'm also kind of curious how they would overhaul Cloud's Punisher mode, because it's changed from game to game, and I really do enjoy the one we got in Rebirth where you're just flipping and dipping back and forth, and then you press triangle and you zip through the enemy. That's pretty sick. But part of me kind of misses the Punisher mode we got in Remake, where it's Cloud going into that big heavy stance and he's landing these really big heavy critical strikes. So maybe a merging of those two for Part 3 would make Cloud feel a little bit more unique, because Cloud is way more fun to use in Rebirth than he was in Remake. In Remake he was fine, pretty standard, but he got kind of boring. Rebirth, however, really flipped that on its head with his abilities and changing up that Punisher mode, so I'm curious to see specifically how they evolve Cloud. Now with the summons, I actually don't really mind how they're currently implemented, but if they did decide to change it and just do how they did it in the OG where they show up and they do one basic attack, I'd be fine with that too, but they've already made 2 games with the current summon system, so I don't really see them changing that up drastically. But maybe having some sort of system where maybe depending on how strong the summon is, it'll either show up in battle and help you out, or it will do just one big attack. Kind of like how they did it in Final Fantasy IX, where the stronger a summon was, you would have the full summon animation play out, but if it was a little weaker, it would just do one big attack and then it was out. So maybe you could find a way to figure that out to change up the summons a little bit. Continuing with the summons, Barisa X-Man 2 says, I'm hoping they change how summons work. I tended not to use them often in combat, maybe something closer to the synergy abilities where they jump in for their big attack and jump out. And the thing with summons is they are kind of a double-edged sword. You summon them, they show up in battle, they do pretty decent damage when they're on the field, but then it kind of becomes this conundrum of, okay, do I spend my precious ATB on myself and my party, or do I command the summon to do a big move that might help or might kind of, not do much or kind of backfire? So it definitely adds a more strategic element to the summons in combat, having to pick and choose like, oh, I don't know what to do. But on the thought of synergy stuff, we did bring this up in a previous video. So both what Omni Slushy is saying and Barisa X-Man, you could have some sort of synergy thing where you equip a summon onto a character and that gives them access to a specific summon-based ability. So let's say you had Titan on Barret, and maybe that gives you some sort of like ground pound slam where you slam the ground and like a bunch of rocks pop out doing big damage to the enemy. Or again, adding into the synergy thing, having a character actually do a team up attack with a specific summon. It wouldn't do a ton of damage maybe, but it would look super sick. So those are different ways you can kind of flesh out the summons a little bit more, give people more options instead of them just showing up, fighting, and then maybe issuing them a command until you wait for them to do their big attack and then they peace out. But I really like the idea of each summon providing a unique attack that a character can utilize. I think that adds more incentive to switch up your summons instead of just using the ones that are most powerful. Shiva, Titan, some of the older ones, maybe they have a really cool ability that really helps out your characters in a specific battle. Next, we have Silent Hero 66, who says it should be one game. No need to add any of the pointless bloat, no need for open world, could just be a world map. Imagine how good an Expedition 33 style world map would have looked for FF7. I've said this before in past videos, I will say it again, you will never ever please 100% of the Final Fantasy fan base. Nobody hates Final Fantasy more than Final Fantasy fans. If this entire trilogy was just one game, you would still have a ton of people who would be complaining. Because if it was one game, it either wouldn't be out yet because it would be a massive undertaking, or it would be out and it would have severe cuts to its story and its gameplay, which, the game would suffer from. Now, I'm assuming this person is speaking specifically on the remake trilogy, as it should be one game, not part 3, because obviously part 3 will be its own game. But based on the scope of this project, I really like what they've been doing. This feels like a massive, lived-in, active world that we are going to fully explore in part 3, especially once we get the high wind. And I think for the scope of this project, you needed to have a massive open world like this. I think if you just did a scaled down open world, maybe it could have worked, but it wouldn't have really fit, in my opinion, the scope of what they're currently doing. And the world map you get in Clair Obscur works for that game for what it is. It's a really beautiful, well-crafted homage to older JRPGs, specifically in the PlayStation 1 era of JRPGs. So having that throwback world map for Clair Obscur I think really works, but I don't know if it would work based on, what they're doing with this current trilogy. And what one person views as bloat, another person could view as a really good time. So again, we've talked in previous videos about how things like padding can kind of be subjective based on the person and the content. Up next, we have Vane Before You, who talks about Vincent, saying, do you think Vincent transformation only limit break or skill? If limit break, how long the duration? So we've discussed Vincent a little bit in the past on how the heck do you make him work with his limit break transformations. And the idea that I kind of settled on was that in combat, Vincent would get access to his different abilities that are from the different limit break transformations. So maybe he would have abilities from the Galleon Beast or abilities from Chaos. Any one of those transformations he could do in regular Vincent form, but they would be weaker. So maybe Vincent could have like a big energy ball attack like the Galleon Beast. Maybe his arm could turn into a chainsaw or like a bladed wing and you could attack the enemy. You could even give Vincent wings to represent the chaos mode, and he could fly around the battlefield, maybe almost kind of like Clive did in Final Fantasy XVI with the Bahamut icon, where he could just hover around the battlefield, do these cool dodges and laser attacks and big blade swipes. That could be pretty cool too. But then if you want to really take advantage of specific abilities, when Vincent transforms, let's say he transforms into the Galleon Beast, he loses all of the other abilities and only has Galleon Beast abilities, but now they're way stronger. So I think you could do that. As for his transformation, I think it would probably either last the length of a summon or maybe half that time, because having fought Vincent recently on hard mode on Rebirth, he is insane. He's a straight up Bloodborne boss. He does so much damage, he's incredibly fast, he can juggle you, his range is insane because he can literally jump from one end of the room to the other to juggle you in the air. He's a madman to fight against, and I get it, he's a boss battle, so he has to be super difficult to fight. But I think they have to find a way to balance that on our side, because if we summon Vincent and he just goes off like that, it would make a lot of fights maybe a little too simple and easy and maybe too fast. So I think you would really have to limit the amount of time that transformed Vincent is actually on the battlefield. So maybe half of what a summon could do. So he could show up, do some really big damage, but you don't want him to overstay his welcome and make the fight too trivial. And I would also assume that we would just lose control of Vincent like we did in the original game. The AI takes over him, he's flipping and dipping around the field, doing his thing. Maybe we could issue him commands like a summon, I don't know. But that's going to be one of the bigger combat things that I think might be harder to figure out for the developers. What do we do with Vincent? But it'll be exciting to figure out how they come to a decision on what to do with Vincent. Also, speaking of old Vincenzo, check out this happy little accident I found while editing some footage the other day. A quick frame of Cloud versus the Galleon Beast in the style of the original turn-based combat system. Looks pretty cool. And with that comes the end of part 1 of this installment of community comments. Yes, you heard me right, I said part 1. I ended up getting more responses from you guys than I was anticipating, and if I lump everything into one video, we'd have a video that is like 60 minutes long, which is kind of insane for my channel, so I figured it'd be better to split it up into 2 parts. So in the next part, we will talk more about Wutai, some of the big character moments you guys are waiting for, some of the concerns people have as well, and more stuff in regards to how exploration can change in Remake Part 3 with Chocobos and Chadley. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to click the like button and subscribe. Doing those things really does help out a ton. Even just clicking the like button and leaving a comment boosts the video's performance. It gets it out there to more people, and I always appreciate it. And of course, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below of what we covered in today's community comments. And if you'd like to participate in a future community comments video, make sure to keep an eye on the post tab on my YouTube channel. I go there from time to time asking you guys for questions and input on Final Fantasy VII Remake or even other things. So with that being said, I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.